Just thinking about a conversation I had with someone the other day, and we were talking about life and various things, and he was like, well, as long as you're happy. And it stuck with me a bit because on this huge transformation journey that we are going through, many of us now, many of us have already been on it for years, some are yet to hop over, I don't know if that is the goal. That film, Pursuit of Happiness. I don't know if we're meant to be pursuing anything. I'm not saying we live a life with no direction or focus or purpose, but happiness for me has never been a goal. I think as a deep feeler, you realise that being light and, happy all the time doesn't exist. There's a depth that invites us into reflection, analysis, sometimes over-analysis, but we're over that now. And it becomes more about centeredness and peaceful heart and a joyful, loving spirit that can radiate outwards. And maybe that appears as happiness. Maybe that appears as contentment, but many of us believe we're here to learn, and learning comes with a few slaps in the faces sometimes. And are we ever happy if we get a slap in the face? No. So it's this transformative energy that's got a lot of us reflecting in conversation or solitary by ourselves as to what does it all mean, what we're here for. I mean, not questioning our lives and giving up, but just, I don't know if I believe anymore that happiness is the pursuit. I think a rich and cultured life is lived through a whole host of experiences, and those can be grim because there's so much, that comes through if we believe in reincarnation and soul alignment, is that things come through from the past, and there's so many contracts to break, there's so many emotions to come to terms with, there's so many temptations to overcome, there are so many. Without this getting heavy, you can find play and joy and do what we do day to day, but in terms of reflecting on a life path, I'm one of the people, among many who are curious and want to learn, and that has come through for me through travel. Initially, everybody looks at the external and going as far away as home as possible to provide those reflections because they're so alien to what you are born in and around. But ultimately as well, you can find enlightenment in your own garden when you're connecting, as many of us are now finding, a heightened awareness to the living environment, the natural environment around us, plant allies, trees, water, spirits, however the elemental realms, and some of us mediums, we channel, and a lot of us might come into that. And that's why I think for me, when this comment came up about being happy, 414 on the clock, is I feel like it was always about overcoming my mental health battles, finding balance within the body and the energetic system, learning and knowing about the emotional body, energy body, physical body, mental, just mental health awareness. And nothing is ever going to look or be perfect. Relationships are going to rise and crumble, and we're going to stick with them or we're going to dip out over a lifetime of beautiful interactions, whether they are, people say, reason, season, lifetime. You know, people come into your life for a reason, for a season, or they're with you through thick and thin. And I'm grateful to some of those long-standing allies and send love to people who are no longer in my life. But I've always learnt, and that's the level up, isn't it? To like just feel heartier, feel grounded in self, feel like we know ourselves better. Fully, I don't know what happens until the day that we pass over. You know, I don't know what that true purpose is. I know there's a calling for me or a mission. Some of us say that we are called to this, or we're on a mission, and there can be various different missions, just by ourselves, in partnership, in families, in other spaces and places, community based. But I guess it's all relative as well. Like, happiness to someone might be 6 days in the gym, and then happiness to another person might be grounding with our bare feet on the grass every day and living a very slow, restful, rested life and doing what we need to live our physical existence. But I think, I can't remember his name, is it the Functional Melancholic? Just a random guy came up on my feed, and the title was Why It Feels Illegal to rest these days. And hearing some of his snippets, one of the phrases that played in my mind was basing someone's character or their quality on their productivity level. Like, why is it so hard for some of us or some generations to just rest and be, or like listen to the body, when clearly there are things like happening inside of many of us right now, purging and deep cell regeneration, because Gaia's getting louder, the frequencies are shifting, the Schumann resonance is affecting us all. I know things happen because of my jawline and various things were on a usual stretch of time. I'm fine, and then I can feel the frequency shift because of some things that alter in my body. And many of us are learning that. I'm in connection with someone who's a very sacred soul and is very, very connected to his body in a way that I don't believe I was back in the day. And having overcome all of that, like numbing through drinking alcohol, and this is not a judgment, you know, alcohol is to be consumed, everything in moderation. Some people believe it's part of the dark sort of realms, but I'm kind of dropping out of all of that judgment space and just making observations of what works for me, how I see things affect people around me, and where I desire to share my time and love. I share it freely with the world up to a certain point, and then I'm just need to, need to recharge. But yeah, this idea about, especially these days with that gentleman talking about you know, our character is aligned with how productive we are. Surely that, like, being productive doesn't make us happy, does it? We're feeling a certain need to be, I don't know if it's part of that old good girl, good boy era where, you know, you have to perform and achieve certain levels to get the recognition from someone else, when it's nice to be honoured as humans first and foremost for being alive, for overcoming all of the trials and tribulations that we do, rather than it being about accolades and, you know, what you look like on paper, which, you know, for some of our work and things, we've got to talk about our previous, there's something going on in the frequencies, we talk about as a way of, I really don't like labels, so when I say I'm a space holder or shamanic shaman, shamanic practitioner, or this and all that. It's a way for us to be, I don't know, identified and categorised, which I don't like, but otherwise you can't really explain your work if people aren't energy people and they don't just see and get your energy. But I feel like this is getting a bit tangenty, 10 to anyone. So I guess, I don't know if you're also questioning this pursuit of happiness or the pursuit of anything in life. I feel there's no standard to be met other than like trying or just being the best version of ourselves as much as we can, for the most part of the, however much we can, really, because there's a lot to keep up with now externally, and if we don't have that internal balance, you can call it internal happiness, but just for me, it's like mental health, soul alignment. Done a lot of healing across the timelines and called in some future things my side, which is work I've done, which may or may not align with everyone here personally, but we all have our way of like regulating the chi, like balancing our energetic system, because everything else emanates from that, and the heart space, and acknowledging the brain, the heart brain, the gut brain, the womb if we're women. So I do wish everybody happiness, but I think maybe joy is something to be shared, and peace and alignment allows for meaningful and nourishing and wholesome experiences which contain light and dark. They contain the shadow work, and they contain our higher self's perspective on what we move through. So, did that make sense? Them's my thoughts about happiness. So, wishing you joyful days ahead.